Welcome to the Top Dog Mindset Podcast, where we unlock the secrets of running a successful dog training business. I'm your host, Kevin, joined by my co-host, Angel. Together, we bring you expert insights, inspiring stories, and practical tips. Whether you're a seasoned pro or just starting out, we're here to provide you with the necessary information to build a thriving dog training company. So relax, join us with a cup of coffee as we explore the Top Dog Mindset Podcast.
All right, welcome back, guys. Got another episode here of the Top Dog Mindset Podcast. And this is an interesting topic, at least to us, because this is something we've been working on inside of our company recently, and something that we've been seeing from quite a few clients. And that's the idea of having real intention and clarity when it comes to who you're hiring and what you're hiring them for, and just your systems and processes in general in your business. So, Angel, I know you were talking to a client about this recently and kind of felt like this was something that was on your mind. So why don't you talk a little bit about it and like why you feel like this is so important for trainers and business owners to understand?
Well, like you said, just having like clear, defined, and structured roles for everyone, and as far as like making sure they know what their exact role is without intentionally or unintentionally like stepping into something else, even if they have good intention behind it and like they're just trying to help complete a task or something like that. But what I find to be the most common thing, and what can also raise some of the most issues, is when it comes to sales. Oftentimes people who are, let's say, someone who has never done in-person consultations before, right? And they're like, well, why can't I just do sales over the phone? Which isn't a terrible thing if, you've grown to that point. But generally, we highly encourage people doing in-person consultations. But, if you have someone who, let's say, for example, is like an office manager, office admin, whatever you want to call it, or someone who is answering the phone, an appointment setter, and stuff like that. Like those very specific roles should have, clear expectations as far as like you answer the phone. This is the type of conversation you should have with the potential client. These are the questions that you should answer, like almost like a script, versus it like bleeding into that person starting to ask like more questions to where they are trying to diagnose the issues over the phone or trying to sell them on something when, again, that's not necessarily their position to do so. Sales is such an important position in the business, just as is answering the phone and appointment setting and all of that. And so I think I mentioned this on maybe the last call or the last meeting, or the one before, but people can start to like skip steps. The sales process is, there's so many different steps from answering the phone all the way to the end where you're closing the sale. And answering the phone alone, that's one step. And having a little conversation, building rapport and stuff, that is a step. And then scheduling the consultation, that is a step. Again, a lot of small steps getting to that point of closing the sale. And when you start skipping all of these different ones, then that can kind of like create a flaw in the system. And so I think like sometimes that can be like a very blurred line for people, where they're like, oh, they're just trying to make that sale for me over the phone. It's kind of like cutting out work for me. But again, if you are skipping those steps and that is happening because that position for someone you hired wasn't very clearly explained or defined or trained, then that can start to cause issues within the actual sales process.
Percent. Yeah, if you leave any room open for interpretation, you're going to get strange interpretations sometimes, you know? And so I think that, not that you want to be totally robotic and say like, this is all you do and never deviate from this, because I think you still want to have some room built in for some level of like artistry and freedom and stuff like that for your employees. But by and large, I think what we're really talking about here is having a process and knowing scientifically that that process is the most effective way to do things in your business. So to your point, using sales as the example, if you have somebody who's answering calls from you, or for you, I should say, and sometimes they answer the call and they try and set a consultation, other times they just try and lock down the sale, it's like you're just kind of leaving it up to like how that appointment setter or salesperson feels in that moment about the lead that's calling in, and just their judgment in that moment as far as should they be sold to or should they be set for an appointment. Whereas what I've found for the businesses that we work with that do $150,000 in a month consistently, they don't do it that way. They have their system, they have their process, they have their way of doing things, and they don't get knocked off kilter just because somebody tries to kind of rush them along a little bit. You know,
Mhm.
I had somebody that I have a sales call coming up with, and they had said to me like, "Oh, well, we had talked before a year ago, and we're talking again now. Like, I was thinking maybe we could just kind of go over things and maybe get things started now." And I still went through and booked them for like a more official call, just because I've had to learn the lesson the hard way many times over. Where as soon as I try and rush the process and let that lead dictate how the sales process is going to go, that's when things don't go well. And because they don't go well, it doesn't go well for us, and it also doesn't go well for them. And so what I always think about with this is like, you're not doing anybody any favors by giving them just information that they don't know what to do with. So they
Mhm.
think that they want the answer to their question of how much is it going to cost? Just give me a general ballpark. But what they really want is a trained dog. And so the money, it's not that it's not important. It's not that it's not going to factor into their decision making, but just giving them a price over the phone makes it entirely just a money problem for them. And I think that's where a lot of people fizzle out versus if you have the opportunity to go meet with them and really take your time selling to them, they can say, you know what, it's a lot of money, but I can see why this is worth the investment. So this is just a reminder for everybody that, it's always worth having your process clearly documented. And even if that's just for yourself, you don't necessarily need to have employees in order to feel like you need to document your processes. As soon as you write
Mhm.
it down and say, like, this is what ABC dog training does, this is our sales process, then all of a sudden you're kind of like, you're writing an SOP for yourself. You're writing it for the company. That's a great thing to have for when the first salesperson does come along or the office manager does come along, because it's clearly documented for them. And again, it removes all the ambiguity from the situation where they feel like it's just up to their discretion in that moment, whether or not they want to sell or just set a consultation. So I think that's kind of the essence of what we're trying to get at here. Is that right, Angel?
Yeah, exactly. And you say this all the time, but appointment setting is a skill set in itself. And I think something that is super helpful for people to really understand, whether you are the business owner or you are the appointment setter, is understanding that, again, that is a skill set in itself. And that initial conversation that you're having with someone, like, that does take work. It's so much easier to handle when someone, let's say someone calls you and they're like, "Hey, do you do this type of training?" And you answer the question. And then, "Hey, can you fix this?" And you say, "Yes." And then, "Okay, what is the price?" And you give them the price. All of that is very easy to do. It's much more difficult to navigate the conversation a certain way and have it structured out a certain way and stick to that, even if they do call you and right off the bat they're asking all of these questions. For example, like, as soon as you answer, they start like firing off all these questions at you, including what is the price, and then you have to kind of reel them in and be like, "Well, first tell me what your name is." And then you're kind of like restarting, and you are the one leading that conversation instead of allowing them to lead it, because then that's where you start to get like a little bit of pushback or even objections from people on the phone before you've even gone through the actual process of trying to sell them on a program. Like, you're trying to sell them on why they should do a consultation with you. So again, like, that is more difficult than just giving someone a price over the phone and then asking them like, "Hey, do you want to do a consultation?" You're leaving so much control up to them. And yeah, I think, like, from what I've seen, people just feel like it should be an easy process. Like, it's a phone call. It should be super easy. But again, it is a skill set. Like, you have to gain this person's trust just to meet with them, especially when they don't even have the information that they called to ask for to begin with. Like, they called for pricing and you can't give that because you have a process. But it's, you guys are the ones running the business or running the whole process, and it's important that you're the one guiding them into that instead of allowing that person calling to have so much control over how it's going to go.
Yeah, it's your business. You dictate who you want to take on as a client, who your ideal client avatar is. And by letting that person call you and just start turning it into a game of 20 questions of, here's all the questions I have about my dog and I need them all answered, you've completely lost all control. And again, I think that if you think of this from a moral standpoint, because I think that's what a lot of this boils down to for people is they feel morally uncomfortable by the fact that somebody asked me a question and I'm not giving a direct answer to it, even though I have a direct answer if I wanted to give it to them. So what I mean
Mhm.
by that is the whole pricing thing. Like, how much is that going to cost? How much is it going to cost to get my dog trained? You could give somebody a price over the phone. But what I always think about is you are doing people a massive disservice when they call you and they ask you that question just because they don't know what other question to ask by giving them a direct answer that's just going to scare them off. Because let's be honest here, people always make financial decisions in life based on what is going to keep them or make them feel more safe versus making them achieve actual happiness. And
Mhm.
so you're not robbing people by not giving them that price point or that price tag, I should say, and moving them into a consultation. Hell, the consultation is free. You're not stealing anything from anybody. You're giving them an hour of your time for free, 45 minutes of your time for free. Or even if it is 25 bucks, 50 bucks, 100 bucks, it's like people will recover from that. It's not the same
Mhm.
amount of money that they'll never be able to come back from. And at the end of the day, they're going to get a lot of value from it. So I think the most important thing here is thinking about it from an ethical perspective of if I do not do my best to get this person to train their dog with me, then I'm actually kind of hanging them out to dry and just letting them make an irrational decision based off of like a number that they got that's completely out of context instead of actually helping them fix their dog's problems. And every trainer who listens to this right now knows that like if problems go unfixed, they don't tend to get better, right? They tend to get worse over the years. And so I think that you have the opportunity to go and meet with them and make them see the light as far as, hey, yeah, it's an investment, but at the end of the day, like here's all the benefits why it's going to be so worthwhile and life changing for you.
Yeah, and a few things that I've talked with people about as far as trying to help them be more mindful of like being in that specific role as far as like this right now you're in the appointment setter role and then when you get into the consultation now you're in the sales role and then when you actually get the dog now you're in the training role. You're a little bit in the training role in the consultation too, but I think it would help to be more mindful of the exact role that you're playing at that point because Especially if especially if you don't have someone that you've hired to help answer the phone and you're doing everything on your own. You're the business owner, you're the trainer, you are the salesperson, you know everything. So naturally it is going to be like, yeah, I know the answers to all of this. Yeah, I can help you with those things. This is what we can work on. This is a program I'm probably going to recommend to you and this is the price. It is easy to just get straight into that, but again, try to just be mindful of the exact role you're playing in that moment. Maybe even try taking the dog trainer out of you and pretend like you are literally just the appointment setter right now. You don't even have the authority to tell them what program that you would end up recommending. You don't have the authority or even the knowledge to tell them how much it could possibly cost. Your only role is to again have like this structured out conversation and then guide them into scheduling that consultation. And then once you go
Mhm.
into the consultation, your role changes. You are the dog trainer slash salesperson. And so there's different different tasks depending on your role at that time.
100%. Yeah. The other thing I want to touch on real quick is the longer I do this and the longer we coach people and help people and listen to their phone calls about their just sales process in general, what we really find, it's very clear in the numbers that most people do not have a sales problem. Most people have an appointment setting problem. Most trainers we work with, when they get the opportunity to go meet with people and they overcome all those initial objections of how much is this going to cost? Can you give me just a general price? Or what program would be best for my dog? Or why is my dog doing this? Can you tell me over the phone why my dog is, behaving like this? Once they just are able to kind of move past all that and just save all that for the consultation, they usually have like 50, 60, 70, 80, 90% of their leads signing up with them. And so this is
Mhm.
just a reminder for anybody listening to this. Like if you're having a hard time getting new clients coming in, don't worry about sales. Worry about consultations. Like worry about getting as many consults set up and holding people to that and getting that time locked down and actually getting the opportunity to get in front of them. Because if you fix that problem, everything else will fall into place. It's very, very rare that we work with people and they're like, I really can't close anybody. if that is
Yeah.
the case, like there's things that can be done about that. And, the sales process is really, really important. But I think the reason for this is that it's difficult to make that initial connection with somebody. They're just calling, they're just kind of inquiring, they're in that like price shopper mode. And so the question is like, how do you get them to stop price shopping? And what I was going to say before is the longer I do this, the most impactful thing that you can do when you're looking at your appointment setting process is don't look at yourself as a dog trainer. Don't go into problem solving mode. You just want to be like the concerned friend almost that is just trying to like help point them in the right direction. And you kind
Mm-hmm.
of want to take all of the dog trainer lingo out of the equation and even the idea of potentially trying to sell them a program and just be comforting and empathetic to them and let them know you're in the right place. We can help you. And listen, we've all met that guy or girl, at like anywhere you go to get new tires or Best Buy or the really friendly barista or whatever. And you have a 2-minute interaction and you're like, oh man, that person was really cool. That was a really good interaction. It's like, what is that? Get down to the root
Yeah.
of what that is. Like, why was that interaction with that barista or with that Best Buy salesperson, why was that better than other interactions you've had in the past? And largely what
Mm-hmm.
it comes down to is like they're paying attention to you, they seem genuinely interested in you, and it's just a good vibe and energy talking to that person. And so just think about that in your appointment setting process. Like, are you actually getting people excited about the idea of doing a consultation with you? Because if they're not excited about it, then they're not going to want to do it. So
Mm-hmm.
Angel, what do you find with that? I mean, just kind of going off of everything that I'm saying there.
Well, first I want to say, like, you mentioned like the different scenarios of just like, having a good conversation with the barista at a coffee shop or Best Buy or whatever. Like, I've literally been in situations like that where at the end I'm like, I love that person. Like, I want to be friends with them just because of
Yeah.
how nice they were and how much they engaged in conversation and all of that. Even if I was just buying like a $6 coffee or something like that, or if it was something they were trying to sell me on and I didn't, it still like leaves a lasting impression. And even if they don't buy from you, they're still going to send people to you because you left this impression of you being such a good person and having good conversation and like they genuinely like you and all of that.
Mhm.
But yeah, you said that most of the time people don't have a sales issue, they have an appointment setting issue. And I think that that is something super important to just have a conversation with yourself about and try to break down. We do it all the time with clients. We can't just take something that someone is saying and be like, okay, the client said this is an issue, so this is the issue we have to fix. We try to break it down and get to the root cause of where that issue is coming from. And one of the questions that we always ask is whenever you go in to do consultations with people, how often are you selling them? And a lot of the time it's like, I close a
Every
sale
time.
almost every single time. Yeah. So it's
Yeah.
like, okay, well, that says a lot. Every time you go to someone's house and you do a consultation, it goes well and you sell them. So that just means you need to get in front of more people. So I think that that is an important conversation to even have with yourself and break down like every little part of your process and see like where are things going really good and where does it seem to be like there's a holdup. Because that'll help you determine like, okay, am I having an issue with the way I'm talking to people on the phone? Am I not leading people into my process good enough or having them trust me to lead them in this process? Or, the person who is doing it for you, or do I need to maybe sit in on some calls and see how those are going? Because that seems to be like where the issue is stemming from.
100%. I feel like Tyson is desperately trying to join the conversation today.
He's trying to say something.
Well, what's
He's
on your
just
mind? I'm just waiting
he's
for him to
just
just
like
talk one of
pacing.
these days. Yeah. I feel like he's just gonna just talk to me one of these days. But yeah, no, I mean it's so spot on. Like at the end of the day, we just notice that people don't tend to have sales problems. They tend to have appointment setting issues. And
Hmm.
it's not the fun, sexy thing to pay attention to. The more interesting thing that you want to pay attention to is like, what is my revenue number at the end of the month? Or, what percentage of people do I close if that's something that, is interesting to you. But at the end of the day, you just get yourself more opportunities at the plate. That's all that
Yeah.
is like if I get more consultations set, I get more chances at the plate, I have a higher likelihood of getting on base. And if I,
Mm-hmm.
do enough consultations, I'll hit a home run eventually and sell a $6,000 program. And so we have a client that we started working with, and she's a super young girl, didn't have a ton of experience when she first started working with us. And she's turned out to just be like a killer with her business. And in the beginning, she had to do quite a few consultations to get her feet underneath her and get comfortable with it and stuff like that. But the thing I love and respect about her so much is that she didn't deviate from the plan when it didn't work at first. So she
Mm-hmm.
didn't get like a couple consultations set and go like, oh, no one said yes to me, so now I'm going to start selling and giving pricing over the phone to qualify people and only want to sell to the serious people. I
Yeah.
just I can't stress to everybody enough. Like, I'm not saying I'm the greatest salesperson in the world. I'm not saying I've sat in the rooms with the greatest salespeople in the world, but I've been through enough coaching programs and paid for enough coaching at this point from people that run businesses that are making $1 million a month. And the thing that I think most people don't understand about running a business is that there's a lot of stuff that you need to do that you don't necessarily want to do. And
Mm-hmm.
the most important thing is like your emotions are going to play such brutal tricks on you as soon as things don't start going well. And it'll make you make really bad decisions if you're not making your decisions based on data and empirical evidence, and you're just going solely off of emotion. So a
Yeah.
really good example of this is just what we're talking about, how somebody, gets a that, and they go, oh, well, nobody said yes to me. And, so I'm just going to start giving price over the phone to qualify them. It's like, you're just going to lose so many people that way. You're totally writing off the idea of like, maybe you didn't do the best job selling at those consultations. Maybe you need to get better as a salesperson. And
Mm-hmm.
so also don't go off of like 3 consults. Don't go off of 10. Go off of 100. Do 100 and see what happens at the end of the 100. I guarantee your sales process and your closing rate will get better. And again, I just feel like people are very tempted to pull the plug on stuff way too early because they feel a little bit disheartened by the results or lack thereof.
It does feel like a little bit of a risk doing in-person consultations. Like, I feel like that's how people see it often, because before you started your business, if someone were to tell you like, hey, you're going to be training dogs, you're going to be doing what you're passionate about, but you're also going to be driving around like crazy trying to sell people, and you're risking potentially all of those people saying no. But then
Mhm.
what if they said, if you don't do any of that, you're also risking losing out on $2,000 to $4,000 for every single household that you went to. So yeah, it is a little scary feeling like you could be wasting that time, but the payoff is so incredibly worth it, and we have so many people that can attest to that. Guys, I know exactly who Kevin is talking about with the girl that he was referring to. So just to let you guys all know, she will be on as a special guest very soon. So you'll be able to hear all of that firsthand from her too.
Yeah, yeah. Again, I mean, we've spoken with people and worked with people who are seasoned veteran dog trainers, and they're convinced that the only people that I go and meet with are the people who get a price over the phone, and they stay stuck, and they're like, I think that people aren't as serious about training as they used to be. Nobody wants to train their dog anymore, or it's all these, new trainers that are charging such little money and undercutting me and stuff like that. And there's all these other reasons other than the one reason that actually influences the success of your business, which is what
Mm-hmm.
you do inside of your business.
Right.
If you're like looking externally constantly and going like the new trainer in town or the economy or whatever other litany of excuses it could possibly be, and you don't reflect on what can I possibly do here to improve on the results, it's just a huge colossal waste of time. And so I just want to, say this to anybody who's feeling a little bit lost or disheartened or anything like that. This is the reason why, we were able to help people that are making $0 a month and help them grow their business to $10,000, $20,000, and so on and so forth, is because so much of their success comes down to their attitude and their positivity and just their willingness to go and meet with people and not get disheartened by hearing no over and over and over again. Because you
Mm-hmm.
need to go through those repetitions. You need to hear those no's in order to start getting more confident in your ability to hear all the yeses. The really
Yeah.
ironic thing too, just to kind of put a final point on this, is I was talking with one of our clients, Jace, not too long ago, and he said to me, I now know what I did wrong in the beginning too. Like there were all these people that didn't buy from me. And if I had the opportunity to go and do those consultations over again, I know they would say yes. And so that was a really eye-opening thing to me because, it's very easy just to walk away from something and say they didn't buy, they weren't a good lead, they sucked, whatever. But at the end of the day, good salespeople find a way to get people across the finish line and find a way to help them.
Yeah, you really just need to trust the process.
100%. Yeah. So I know this kind of went off the rails a little bit and we started talking way more about sales, but I think that the initial point here is really good and something that we've been reflecting a lot on in our business, which is just documenting things and not leaving stuff up for negotiation or debate. I mean, we had something like this happen for us recently and we were like, I thought we were doing it that way, or I thought we were doing it that way. And the conclusion that I've come to every time that happens at the business is if it's not written down and it's not documented, it's not real.
Mm-hmm.
It's not real.
Yeah.
It doesn't exist. So like it needs to be written down because if it's written down, then you can go revisit it and go back to it. And you can go, hey, Kev, remember when we said you were going to do this thing and you didn't do it? And then here it is right here. There's no room for interpretation. It's like all right there. And, we all agreed to this is how we're going to do things moving forward.
Yeah, exactly. It's a learning process, I feel like, no matter what stage of business you're in.
Totally. All right. Well, listen, we're going to wrap it up here because I know we both have calls we got to run to and stuff like that. So I hope you guys found some value out of this episode. And we got some exciting guests lined up. So if you guys are getting any value out of this, do us a favor, share this with a friend, give us some feedback on what you think of the episodes and if there's anything you want to hear us talk about. And we will see you guys all very soon in the next one. See you guys.
Bye, guys.